All right, what did we learn? Good evening and good week. What did we learn last time? We're learning my morim from the book Likuti Torah, which was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad. And he's explaining sentences from the Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, an 8-chapter poem, if you want to call it, written by King Solomon, depicting in very, how do you say, metaphorical terms, the relationship, the love relationship between God and the Jewish people. When God took them out of Egypt and when he built for them, gave them the Torah, and how that's something like a wedding, like an engagement. He took them to the land of Israel, built the first temple. That's like consuming the wedding or finalizing the wedding. And then how God looks for the Jewish people, and the Jewish people run away from God, and then Jewish people look for God, and God hides himself from the Jews. And it's to this very dynamic, ongoing, constantly ever-changing, intimate relationship between God and the Jews and God. Good. So right near the beginning of this 8-chapter book of the Torah, it says like this: Reach shmonecha tovim, the smell of your oil is good. As we said so many times before, this is the only book in the Torah that has absolutely no simple meaning. It's all allegory and metaphors and symbolizations and allegories to something else. Reach shmonecha tovim, the smell of your oil. Yeah. Smell of your oil is good. Shemen turak shemecha. Your name is like good oil. But some people say this means also your oil, but anyway, your oil, let's just take the poured out oil. Shemen turak, poured out oil is your name. Alkain, therefore, alamot, the virgin girl. Alamot doesn't always mean virgins. It can also mean young women or young men. But in this case, it does. Alamot avucha, the young virgins love you. Okay, so the Rebbe explained, and we already finished 2 paragraphs here. The virgins, that's talking about the souls of the Jews as they are before they come into the world in heaven. And they're called virgins because they have not had any relation with their husband. Who's the husband? God. When do they have this relationship that when you call it, pierces their virginity? When the soul comes into the world and it realizes how difficult the world is, and it calls out to God, and then God has mercy, and this mercy is what pierces the virginity of the Jewish people. That's a relationship which is called face to face. That's what it means. May God shine his face on you. Now, what this means in actual physical terms is that the Jewish people have the special, unique, deep relationship with God, like a husband and a wife. And this relationship is always changing. It's always changing. But the Jew, when he requests from God mercy, as then God's mercy pierces through, as niftach libo, pierces through the covering of the heart, And that's what it means that God has relations, so to speak, with the Jewish people. This is what's called tshuva, when we return back to our true identity in this impossible situation that we're in the world. So we're in the world, we get all involved in the world, and we realize that we're lost. That's it. We lost the whole business. We're helpless. And we call out to God, please help us. And this mercy, this is the intimate relationship which changes the Jews from virgins to be wives, God's wife. And then it changes our thought, speech, and action so that everything is only to God. We don't want heaven. We want the lower heaven. We don't want the upper heaven. All we want is to be close to God. That's something like the month of Elul and Tishrei when we return our faces to God. Okay. Hine, this is what we got up to. Hine, behold. Calls all this is beneshamos in the souls. Maybe we'll make this a little bigger over here. Can I do this? Let us see. Here we go. Oh. Too big, huh? Too big? Maybe I overdid it. Let's see. No, it's all right. Hine, behold. Hine, behold, calls that all this is the souls of the Jews as they leave heaven and come into this world, into a body, into exile. You read a Gedol, a tremendous descent. But hu al yedei tshuva, and this is by means of what we call repentance or return. We return to our true Jewish identity, and we realize how far away we are from it, and how impossible to return to it on our own. We need God's help. That's why it says b'makom bal tshuva. That's what's called doing tshuva. Tshuva means to return to who you really are. Like you say, return to consciousness. Right? A normal person is not unconscious. You wake him up, he returns to who he is. And that's what means returning to the awareness of God. To return to the awareness that God is creating us, God's enlivening us, God is always with us. There's nothing except for God. Our whole being, our whole life, our whole personality, everything depends on God. And we don't feel it at all. And when we want to return to that feeling, it was the feeling we had before we were born, that's called doing tshuva, returning to the Creator. But what about the souls that are in heaven? They are the level of totally holy. Good morning, tzaddikim. Excuse me. So that these souls, masigim, that they do, the souls in heaven, we call them virgins. Remember, that's what we said in the beginning, that they grasp the ray, this revelation of God's presence, which in this world we don't grasp anything. In heaven, where they're totally aware of God's presence. In this world, we're aware of money, we're aware of other physical pleasures, but they really feel the Creator. If so, up there in the upper worlds, before the soul comes into the body, by means of what? Who aliyasam likalel. If so, they're stuck. The soul, when it comes down into this world, as it feels how far away it is, and it can return. But the soul, as it is up in heaven, it can't return. It doesn't want to return. It thinks it's as close as possible. The soul, when it comes down into this physical body, also thinks it's as close as possible, but it knows it's a lie. It can grasp, wow, I'm fooling myself. Right? Sometimes the person just gets sick of this world. Being too involved in the world. He realizes that he doesn't own anything, that the world owns him. Right? A guy has a brand new Ferrari car. He realizes that he does not have the car has him. right? His whole being, his whole worth is involved in this car or his job or how many zeros he has in his bank account. And he gets disgusted, calls out to God, and God answers with great mercy. That's the souls in the body. But what about the souls that are up in heaven? The souls that are up in heaven, they don't feel that they'll never be aware that there's anything wrong. How can they possibly be elevated to be included in the essence of God? Now you have to realize one thing. The upper worlds are just as far away from God as the lower worlds are. It's just that the upper worlds have a little bit more comprehension of what God is than we do in this world. In this world, we have no comprehension whatsoever. And when we realize how far away we are, even though we might not know what that means, but at least we know, I don't know what God is, but I know it's not me. Suddenly he realizes it, then he can jump out. But the souls, as they are up in heaven, they are basking in the rays of God. They think that's it. They don't need more. Like a judge or a policeman or whatever. He receives bribes. He receives bribes. All of a sudden, the whole mind is different. His whole mind is different. He starts to look at the criminals that they really are okay, and that he just thinks about getting more. He becomes bribed. That's the souls as they are up in heaven. They're bribed. They think that they're as high as you can get. By the souls as they are in heaven, there's not by them a broken heart from the depth of their heart so that they can arouse this mercy of God. So that's what's hinted at the beginning of that sentence, and that we started the sentence from Song of Songs, that the smell of your good oil, therefore the virgins will love you. What is the smell of your good oil? What is this? That after we're talking about now, this is the souls. There was two meanings of virgins. Virgins, and how does the soul get up into heaven? Two ways. First of all, it starts there. And the other way is that it goes there after a person dies. After a person dies, so the soul is also pure. But the thing is, after a person dies, he has the benefit of all the good deeds that he did when he was alive. I mean, you've probably surmised by now, if you haven't, so I hope you take this sitting down. But everybody dies. People don't live forever. Everyone's going to die. Everybody. And this is a big gift that God puts us here at all. He doesn't have to even put us here at all. What's the alternate to being alive in this world? What's the alternate to being alive in this world? To be alive in the upper worlds. Because the fact of the matter is that nobody really dies. The soul is always alive. It's alive in the body, it's alive outside of the body. But it's a totally different situation. The soul being in the body or not being in the body. Because when the soul's in the body is us. There can't be anything worse than dying, leaving the body. When the soul's not in the body, there can't be anything worse than being in the body. The soul, when it's up in heaven, it feels truth. So there's two ways. Either there can be the soul up in heaven before it comes into the body, or the soul in the heaven after it's in the body. And when it's after the body, so it has the benefit of, if you made use of the time that you were alive, of the Torah and of the Torah that you learned. When the soul was in the world. When the soul was in the body. That the Torah because the Torah is also part of the world. Just like your soul is put into a physical body, so the Torah is also in physical things. You have to put on physical tefillin, and you have to give physical charity, and you have to keep Shabbos, physical Shabbos, and not do physical sins. That's what we said, that poured out oil is your name. Call a Torah, the whole Torah is the name of God. And it is poured out from one vessel, namely in the upper worlds, vessel to a lower world, to be put in the physical world, but in physical things. And the more that the Torah comes down below, it becomes more and more fragrant. Kamosha anaruim, like we can see with physical oil, or let's say perfume. Shema shehoya lamaila, when it was kishahurak mikli al kli, that which the oil, when it was poured from one vessel to another, right? And the smell is not so strong. When it comes down and it gets in the physical world, then lamata recha yoter, the smell is more. That's why you ever see these people, these ladies, they sample perfume. So they put a little bit on their arm or something like that, or on their hand, and then they can smell it. But when it's not from the body, you can't smell it. It's the same thing with Torah. Only when the Torah comes down into this physical world has it got this fragrance to it. It's like precious oil. Same thing the Torah. In the Torah, the end is found in the beginning. And then there's the highest, most spiritual, godly aspect of the Torah. That's the really talking about the end, the physical world. Up there in the highest of highs, the highest mystical, spiritual, whatever it is, levels of Kabbalah that only the greatest geniuses understand. What is really the point up there? This physical world, that we should do commandments. That's what it means. The end, this physical world, that's the highest thing in Kabbalah. That's why all these Kabbalah centers and Kabbalah this, if it doesn't stress actually doing the commandments, then the whole thing is a big bluff. It's an empty balloon. Sof Maser b'dvar Shabbat Techila, because the first thing that God's thought was the deed in this physical world. By means of this, Yesh Lehem Aliyah Likalel, by means of this, so they have the power, because the physical things in the world, because they came from the essence of God, and because they came from the Torah as it is in the essence of God, so that gives the power to elevate and to harmonize and to use things in this world properly. V'zeu al-ken almost, that's what it means. The virgins, these are the souls that are not in bodies in this physical world. Nevertheless, they love you. What does it mean they love? This tremendous love. Kital oros talcha, because there is the dew of God's light that enlivens the dead. This is found only in the Torah. That's what it says when God gave the Torah, that everybody died, and God enlivened them with this dew that he's going to enliven the dead. And this dew, since then, has become part of the Torah. So this is above all of the dead. This is above death. And that's what all of the souls up in the upper heavens and the upper worlds, that's what they appreciate. The Torah that was learned by that soul before it died, before it came into the upper worlds. And that's what it means, a dew of light is your due. Call a mishtamish ba'ora Torah, anyone who uses the light of the Torah. Ora Torah mechayo, then the light of the Torah enlivens him. Because we have to remember the Torah is not just the Jewish religious book. It is that also. But the Torah is the will and wisdom of the essence of God, directly from the essence of God. It's not a book, so to speak. It's pure life. It just happens to be that in order to transform it from God's wisdom to ours, it has to be done through letters. That's what it means. Tovin, this fragrant oil is good. Tov, the word tov is light. Why does the word light mean tov? L-I-G, light. Illuminates. At the or ki tov, it says that the light, when God saw the light, he made light on the first day of creation. He saw that it was good. By means of tshuva, by means of returning to God, the from the depth of the heart, while the soul is still in this world, the soul has the ability to elevate also to this tremendous love. Okay, so the soul, after a person dies, the soul gets a blast of all of the good deeds and all the Torah and etc. that it learned. And that's this fragrant oil, the fragrant oil of the Torah that was learned in this world. It benefits the soul afterwards. But what about before, afterwards, when the soul is still in this body? Why do we have to wait to then to get this levels of love and revelation of God? It says, well, your body, it disturbs it. It gets in the way. It says, yeah, but still, nevertheless, I mean, isn't it possible to get this tremendous love and awareness of God here in this world? I mean, after all, we're talking about God is everywhere. God's not just up in the upper worlds. God is creating everything. Why can't we see it? So he says that it's possible also in the soul, when it's in this physical world, can also get to this high level of love. How? That's what it says right in the beginning. The sentence right before this. Yishakeni mishikas pio. That God will kiss us with the kisses of his mouth. The Torah comes from God's mouth, and the kisses of God's mouth, that's the inside of the Torah, the godliness in the Torah. Hine Isa, it says, Arvim alai divrei sofrim yoter miyaino shel Torah. God said, it's sweeter to me, the words of the rabbis, than all the secrets of the Torah. What's an example of these words of the rabbis? The 100 blessings that we bless every day. Now, the 100 blessings a Jew is supposed to bless 100 blessings every day, and this whole idea was instituted by the rabbis, and the blessings themselves were instituted by the rabbis. From the Torah, there's the blessing we say after eating. And the blessing of the Kohanim. But all the other blessings that we say before we eat, and also before we eat bread, and before and after we eat anything else except for bread, are only from the rabbis. And you're supposed to say 100 blessings every day. You praise God, you thank God, you request from God. All these are blessings. All these blessings that we make every day, Baruch Atah Hashem, they all come from the rabbis. Why did the rabbis make this? These blessings, Shiyu is galus amshachas min ha'olam ad olam, so that there would be a revelation of God from the hidden worlds to the revealed worlds. That's what we say. Baruch Atah means to be blessed, to draw down Elokeinu, our God. That it should be our God, not just above. After we die, we receive it, but even now. Only just thinking about it and believing in it. But it should be, in a way, he's galus nekudas lavavo, that we should reveal the inner point of our soul. There should be one will, yisbrach to God, in every single Jew. Okay, what's the Rebbe talking about? Everybody knows that they're alive. How do you know you're alive? How do you know you exist? Maybe it's a big dream. Maybe it's a big mirage. Maybe you're being hypnotized. Of course, that's ridiculous because, let's say it's a big dream, but who's dreaming? Who's being hypnotized? There's no doubt in my mind that I exist. Here I am. It's a thing that I'm certain about. It's beyond all understanding, beyond all comprehension. It's something that I am 100%. You can sit and convince me all the time. It's a big mirage. It's just a bunch of electrical shocks. But here I am. I know that I'm here. Well, the revelation of God means that as sure as you are that you exist, infinitely more so will you be sure that God exists, because God is creating you. So my reality comes from God's reality, but my reality is a created one, and God is the creator. Says the Rebbe, when a Jew feels this, then there's a natural, automatic love, just like a person automatically loves himself if he's normal, and he doesn't want to damage himself if he's normal. Also, that when a person feels God, he'll always automatically love God, do everything he possibly can to give God pleasure. That's what God says when you do the commandments. He gives him pleasure. And to avoid that God should have any pain. When you do a sin, it says that God gets pain. Does it make any sense? No. But that's the fact. That's what it means from the inner point of the heart. Because every single Jew, every single Jew has a Hava Mesoteres. Every Jew has this hidden love. Each one according to his ability. The Gilui, in revelation, when bitfilah, when you pray in the morning. Prayer in the morning is supposed to be an exercise in serving God with your mind and heart, especially the heart. But you can't awaken your heart unless you don't understand properly the value of God. So it says each person has to think, and then you can wake up this natural love that's right there. Just like a person has a natural love for God, you don't have to learn how to love yourself unless you're sick. I mean, there's some people that are sick, they're suicidal and they're depressed, and then they have to be a natural, healthy person loves himself. He wants what's good for himself. When he's hungry, he eats. A natural person. We're just saying that the ideal is that everyone should feel that this self that I have is just a creation, and that God is infinitely closer to me than I am to myself, and He's creating me. When can we do this? In prayer. There are some that cry out when they pray. How far away? Even though he finds in himself that he's very crass, and he's got all sorts of negative lusts and desires. Bamidas gashas, all sorts of how do you say, animalistic drives. But in Kol Zeh Emes, the truth is, it's not so. Rak sheker. If you think that you're very low and you're very terrible, and it's a big lie. Why? Because the alma de shikra. It's a big lie. You think you love yourself. You think that you are a, evil person. It's a big lie. It's not so. The love you have for God, that's the truth. Loch, and therefore, Nikra Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people are called egos. That's why they're called in places Alginat egos, the garden of the, nuts, like an almond, uradity, just like an almond, an walnut. Sheyesh bo moach v'klipa, that it has meat in it, and on the inside, and on the outside it has a shell. That covers over. The same thing is in the soul. While the soul is in the body, in this physical world, that's all secret of the hidden love of every Jew. In other words, it's there, it's just covered by a big shell. So we're going to look at the sentence afterwards, and we're going to see how this thing breaks down. How can a person get such a tremendous revelation? By means of godliness, by means of arousing Sod Elyon, by revealing God's secret existence. Yoshet Choshech Sitro, like it says, God makes darkness his hiding place. Laboli, his scholars to be revealed. In other words, the secret of creation is, on one hand, the most infinitely deep thing that can possibly be. On the other hand, it's the most obvious thing. Here we are. We're being created. We are being created. We are, in a way, the center of this whole miracle. The whole thing depends on us. God is creating me and you every single instant. But we are two things. Number one, we're the essence of the whole thing. We come from the essence of God, the essence of God's love. On the other hand, we're the furthest away. We're like the outer shell of this walnut. So what we have to do is just realize that our distance from God is because we have to, break our heart a little bit. And by means of this, you reveal the secret of godliness, then you reveal this secret love which is in our heart. Oh. Like it says in the Ma'amer Kiyel Ishtei Nashim, talking about the Ben Sora of Amora, says a person has two, so right before the Ben Sora, a person that has two wives and he gives birth to two sons. Says one of the wives he loves and the other one life he doesn't love. The other wife he doesn't love. This is talking about the natural love for God that's concealed inside of him, and the essence of God's love. In any case, when wine comes in, the secrets come out. And that's talking about, what is this wine? It's hidden inside of the grape. That's this tshuva, that's this return to God. By means of this comes the upper secret of God and the lower secret, which is inside of us. That's what it means, mi yigale razel banai, who revealed this secret. Oh, Kamai. Children, when God gave the Torah, and the Jews said Nasa v'nishma, so they revealed this tremendous hidden love they had inside of themselves. So let's go back to the first sentence and let's see if we can analyze it according to what we've just finished learning. Let's see where we have over here. Oh. Yes, okay. So what do we say? The reach shemanecha tovim, the smell of your oil is good. What did we say that is? That's the fragrance of the Torah and the commandments that the soul does in this world before it dies. That fragrance of the Torah and the commandments, that goes up and gives a revelation to the souls that are there after we die, our souls. Where do we get this from? Shemen Turach Shemecha. Because it says your name, which that's the Torah, it's just poured out oil. God pours it out, and just like oil, only when it gets to the lowest place does it really have a good smell. The same thing, the Torah, only when it's in this physical world does it have this good smell. That's why it says, therefore, the virgins love you. What's the virgins? That's talking about the souls after they've been in the body. And now they're up in the upper heavens, and they can't scream out to God for mercy, that God will come in and do away with their virginity, like the soul when it's in the physical world. But what do? Have? They have this revelation of the Torah that from the time when they were alive. And then afterwards, then the next sentence, the Rebbe says, but nevertheless, when the soul is in this body, it can also have a little revelation of this upper level of love, which is not available to the soul here in the world as much because of our bodies. It says that's by doing tshuva and learning Torah in this world. Learning Torah and doing tshuva in this world, that's what says that you will kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. This also can reveal what's called the secret inner depth of God. And because of that, it'll also reveal the inner secret depth of love of our soul to God. Okay, so what's the Rebbe trying to tell us? King Solomon knew what he was talking about. He was talking about something that's more important than anything in the world. And that is to reveal the Creator and the creation. And it's done by means of us thinking about God, doing good deeds, and love, revealing this deep, 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 deep love that God has for us, and consequently, the deep love that we have in our hearts, every single Jew latent in his heart for God, and seeing that God is creating the whole world. So this will spread to the whole entire world. All mankind will see and feel how tremendously important we are in God's eyes. God willing, next week, we'll continue with the sentence, I am black and beautiful. Here, where's this? This is. Shechora ani v'nava v'noshalayim. I am black and I am beautiful, the daughters of Jerusalem. This we'll learn, God willing, next week. Have a good week with Moshiach Now.
Hashem. Thank you.
Shalom uvracha.
Shalom uvracha. All the best.